Hello everybody and welcome back my friends, it's the Everyday Aquarist here, and in today's video we are going to be looking at diatoms in marine aquaria. So those of you familiar with my channel will know that I set up this marine 5-foot aquarium a couple of weeks ago, and when I set it up it was really shiny and clean, but now a couple of weeks later you can see it has gone a horrible brown colour, and this is fairly typical of what to expect of new marine aquaria. So you yourself might be in the same situation where you've just started up a new marine aquarium, you were really going for it for the first couple of weeks, and now it's gone horribly brown and you're at your wit's end and are despairing. Well, I would say don't worry, just watch this video and I'll explain everything to do with this brown algae and why it has come and how you can solve this issue. So firstly, this browning is called diatoms. It's a very common occurrence in marine aquariums. Normally it happens in new setups such as this, but you can get diatom issues later on down the line, even in mature aquariums. So a diatom is actually a kind of microalgae, and it has a very hard shell to it. Diatom algae is a photosynthetic organism, so it does rely on nutrients and light to survive. But why does diatom algae appear in your marine aquarium? So if we look at this particular tank, when I set it up I didn't use anything in there that was particularly alive or covered in bacteria from the ocean. So essentially everything that I put into this tank was completely dead and dry and had no organic life living in it. So in a marine tank, the first pioneers, the first settlers to come into your ecosystem is normally diatom algae. Now I did add a little bit of live rock there from my main system, and that's what has introduced the diatoms into my system. And diatoms love new systems because essentially it's a blank slate for them to overwhelm and grow on. There's little to no competition to outcompete them, so they have a whale of a time and essentially are able to colonize every single surface in your aquarium. And that's essentially all diatoms are. They're a very opportunistic, basic life form which appears in new systems because there's essentially nothing else in your tank to outcompete it. And that's what leads to this browning of every surface in your aquarium. So what can we do to get rid of these diatoms? Well, there's a few different techniques that we can use. The most successful one I'll mention at the end, but these are things that we can do just to slow the growth down or reduce the amount of total diatoms. It really depends on how bad your system is dealing with the diatom outbreak and also how many diatoms you've got in your tank. Now I would say that this particular system isn't too bad of an outbreak. This is kind of expected. I would say this is a mild outbreak of diatoms. However, this could get worse depending on how the system wants to mature and how we deal with this outbreak. So firstly, being photosynthetic, we might want to consider actually reducing the light output from our light. So you can see here I've got an LED bar. It's a full spectrum light and it's a very bright light, even though it's suspended above this tank, and the tank's actually 2 foot deep, so I'd probably say the bottom of the tank to the light maybe is 3 or 4 feet. It's still bright enough to provide the diatoms with much needed light to photosynthesize. So what we can do is either reduce the light going into the aquarium, or we can actually completely turn it off. Depends at what point your aquarium's at. So at this point here, I haven't really got anything in there that needs the light to be on. There are a few macroalgae, so obviously if I turn the light off completely, the macroalgae might suffer. However, if there's nothing in there which you're too worried about, what you can do is actually turn your light off and black out your aquarium. You could even wrap it in something like a blanket or something like that, just to stop all light getting in, and that would quickly and rapidly starve the diatoms of light, and therefore they would probably die over a period of 3 to 4 days. However, this doesn't stop them coming back once you turn the light back on, but it does give you quite a good control of your diatom issue. The other thing that diatoms need to survive is, of course, nutrients. Now, having a hard shell, these diatoms actually use quite a lot of silicates, and that's one of the main drivers of the growth of diatoms. It's high amounts of silicates in the aquarium, and you tend to get quite a lot of silicates in a new aquarium, and this is just the initial sort of burst of life into the tank, using up all of the available nutrients. So silicates, nitrates and phosphates, amongst others, are ones which really drive the initial burst of diatom growth. So to limit the amount of nutrients available, you might want to consider using RO DI water in your aquarium, which you should be doing anyway. So if you've used tap water for your aquarium water, obviously that will have a lot of rubbish in it, which will increase the amount of nutrients available to the diatoms. So definitely limiting nutrient availability in your aquarium is a big factor when dealing with not just diatoms but lots of other types of algae. Another thing that we can do, not necessarily to stop the diatoms from growing, but to potentially remove some via predation, is actually add things like snails to the system. Now, this particular snail, which is the Mexican turbo snail or the giant turbo snail, is a really good eater of diatom algae, and this particular one will be going into this tank after this video. But also we can add other snails to the system, such as nerite snails. My personal favourite snail to add to this system, and it's one that I have actually already added to that tank, is the dove snail. And these guys are really great at cleaning up and eating many different types of algae, including diatom algae. But of course there are other species as well. Things like banded trochus and astrea will also do a fine job. The most important thing to realise about diatom algae though, and this is especially true if your tank is new and it hasn't been running for at least 6 months. Diatom algae is kind of a natural thing to happen in a new aquarium. It happens in both marine and freshwater tanks. You'll find that when you set a tank up, for the first week or so it looks great, but then you get this diatom algae appear everywhere. It's completely natural really. The best thing that you can do, other than limiting light and limiting food available, is just to wait it out, because eventually what will happen is the next wave of organisms will start to inhabit your aquarium, and this means that they'll generally be out competing the diatom algae in the long run. You can see it happening in this tank already. So this rock here is going green. The other ones are obviously brown, but on this rock and the surrounding rocks you can start to see the greenness coming in. And this is kind of like the second wave of algae coming in. This is the tank maturing, and as the tank matures, this green algae and others, such as maybe this hair algae on here and maybe some of the macroalgae that I'm going to be adding and have already added, will start to spread, and they will actually take over the niche that the diatom algae is using up now. So you can see it on the clamshell as well, as a bit of green on there. So give this tank a couple of weeks and I will probably predict that most of the brown diatom algae has disappeared, and the next wave of algae, such as the green algae, will be on all the rocks, and also there might even be some calciferous algae growing as well. So the big take-home message right at the end is not to panic with diatom algae. It is a really natural thing that you get with most, I'd say 90% of new aquarium setups. You get this diatom algae. There are ways to prevent it. So if you use quite a lot of pre-matured live rock, or you've used quite a lot of the bio starters, especially things like the ATM starters, then you might skip this stage altogether. But if, like me, you haven't done that and you've just put all your bits and pieces together, added light and salt water, then you'll tend to get this bloom. And the best thing, and the thing that I'm going to be doing, is just to wait it out, and it will generally go away on its own. If it doesn't go away though, and it stays and lingers, and your tank doesn't get past this stage, then doing the things like I've suggested, such as limiting light, limiting nutrients, adding lots of cleaners to the tank, you should move past the diatom stage in around a month to 2 months after your tank has started maturing. So I hope this video has been helpful to get over your issue, or at least understand your issue of brown diatom algae in your aquarium. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to answer them and respond to you. Please remember to like this video as well, it really helps me out, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed already. Remember to hit that notification bell as well, because then you will get updates on any new content that I release. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and happy fish keeping!